Menmajia of Hangzhou was fond of playing chess, and his teacher, Mr. Sun, often played chess with him. In the 6th of the 5th year of the Yongzheng reign, 1728, it was very hot. Men invited 5 friends around, playing chess with each of them in turn. After Sun finished his turn, he said, "I am tired and would like to take a nap in the east room. Then I will be back to determine the victory." After a while, some shouts were heard from the east room. Men and the other 4 friends rushed over to have a look and found Sun collapsed on the ground. His face was covered in his own saliva. They fed Sun some ginger juice and he came to. When they asked him what had happened, he said, "I wasn't yet in a deep sleep when my back began to feel a little cold. The area was as big as a walnut at first but then gradually grew to the size of a dish. Before long, half the bed was cold and the cool air penetrated straight into my heart and bones. I didn't know why. Since I heard some noises coming from below, I looked down and found a skull opening its mouth and blowing towards me from under the bed. I couldn't help but feel extremely terrified, so I fell to the ground. Without warning, the skull beat me with its head and didn't leave until it heard someone coming. The 4 friends all asked to dig into the ground to remove the skulls. However, being afraid of incurring disaster, Min's family members dared not dig them up and simply locked the east room instead. After repressing the rebellion of the 3 feudatories, General Zhao Liangdong passed through Chengdu in Sichuan on his way back to the capital. The governor of Sichuan welcomed him and escorted him to the house of a local citizen to spend the night. General Zhao, however, disliked the room as he found it too cramped. He wanted to stay in the office of the censorate on the west side of the city. The governor explained that he had heard that the yamen had been locked up for over a century as it was haunted by a multitude of monsters, and thus he had not dared to prepare it for his arrival. General Zhao smiled and said, "I pacified hordes of rebels, killed scores of bandits. If those demons and ghosts have spirits and know about me, they will be afraid of me too." He immediately asked his servants to clean the rooms. He let his family members sleep in the inner room while he himself stayed alone in the middle room. He rested, using the long halberd he used in the army as a pillow, and slept. At the second watch, the hooks of the bed curtains clanged with a clear sound and a tall man in a white gown with a big belly appeared in front of him, standing before the bed. The light of the candle became greenish and cold. General Zhao got up and shouted fiercely at the ghost, who promptly retreated several steps back. As the light momentarily illuminated the ghost's face, the general glimpsed the fearsome expression of a guardian god from a folk painting. Zhao thrust his lance but the ghost evaded it, moving behind a supporting beam. Zhao thrust his lance again, and once more the ghost dodged it. Then he disappeared, quickly sheltering inside a small crack in the wall. Then retracing his steps, General Zhao he felt as if he was being followed. He looked around and found the ghost sneaking up behind him with a sneer. The general was furious and scolded him, "How can such an insolent monster be living in this world?" Zhao's servants all got up, gathered their weapons and advanced, ready to fight the ghost. The ghost hastily retreated again and, passing through a crack in the wall, slipped into an empty room. Dust and sand rose up and there was a thundering noise, as if other ghosts were coming to help him in the fight. On the contrary, the ghost came back into the main hall alone and stood upright, preparing to put up a desperate struggle. The servants looked at each other, no one daring to advance on the ghost. The general, however, became more and more angry, and with his own lance speared the monster through the belly. As the lance pierced through him, the ghost's body and face disappeared with a strange sound. What remained were only 2 golden eyes on the wall, the size of large copper basins. They radiated a dazzling metallic light. The servants hit the monster with their swords, reducing him to sparkles that scattered throughout the whole room. The sparkles were big at first but then gradually became smaller and smaller. At last, they went out. By then it was daybreak. The next day, General Zhao mounted his horse to leave Chengdu. Before that, he related what he had seen to the city officials, who all remained speechless with wonder and fear. In the end, nobody ever knew what kind of monster he had come across. Duke Xiongmin, the son of General Zhao, was the stadtholder of Beijing. Once when he was studying in the west building with the doors and windows all closed, something flat edged in sideways through the crack of the window. Once inside the building, it rubbed its head, hands, and feet with its hand, and gradually became round. It turned out to be a man wearing a square scarf and red shoes like scholars wore. He moved forward and performed a deep bow with hands clasped towards Xiongmin, saying, "I am an immortal fox scholar and have been living here for 100 years. I dwell here, thanks to the kind permission of my lords. You have showed up here to study and I dare not disobey you, as you are an official of the emperor. So I come asking for your instructions. If you do wish to study here, I shall go elsewhere. However, please decide within 3 days. But if you take pity on me and allow me to reside here, please lock the building behind you as usual." Astonished, Zhao smiled and said, "You are a fox, so how can you be a scholar?" The fox replied, "All the foxes take an examination presided over by the goddess of Taishan once a year. Those who are accomplished in cohesion and coherence in writing are selected as fox scholars, and those whose writing is of poor quality are destined to be wild foxes. The fox scholars are allowed to cultivate themselves to become immortals while the wild foxes are not." The fox scholar then tried to persuade Zhao by saying, "You are such a noble man. What a pity it is that you are not cultivating yourself to become immortal. It is very difficult for one such as me to achieve such cultivation. First, we have to cultivate ourselves until we attain a human form, and then we must learn the human language. But to learn the language of humans we first have to learn the language of birds. To learn the language of birds, we have to learn all the languages of all the birds all over the world. It is only when we have learned all of these that we can speak like a human being and take on a human form. This usually takes 500 years to do. But when human beings cultivate themselves to become immortals, they suffer 500 years less of painstaking effort than other species. When noble men and literati cultivate themselves to become immortals, they suffer 300 years less of painstaking effort than ordinary men. It is a general principle that people who want to cultivate themselves to become immortals will take 1,000 years to do so." Zhao was so delighted by what the fox had said that the next day he locked the west building and gave the place back to the fox. "These two things were told to me by Zhao's Hitan, the prefect of Zhenyuan, who was the grandson of General Zhao." He added, "My father regretted that he didn't ask the fox which examination subject had been selected by the goddess of Taishan.